Firstly, just like your reaction to last night's second League Cup semi-final, second leg, and you now know that at Wembley on the 16th of March you will face Liverpool.
Yeah, great game. Great game lined up. I think Liverpool did what they usually do at Anfield last night. Really good performance from them, and whoever we were going to face, it was going to be a real challenge in the final. But I think the Liverpool game is a mouth-watering tie. I think we'll really look forward to it, but we have to put it to bed for the time being. We have to focus on what's immediately ahead of us now. That's our biggest challenge, mentally, to focus on the here and now, and that's Birmingham.
And after Birmingham, some big matches in the Premier League, potentially another FA Cup tie before the League Cup final. So in that respect, can it be maybe easier than we might imagine to try and park the Wembley thing, because you've got a lot of big fixtures coming up that you'll be looking to win?
Yeah, I think we have to. I think that's the biggest challenge for us now, is to, as I said, is to eradicate it from our brain for a period of time. And when it comes round, of course, we give it our full energy and focus. But when you're playing the likes of Manchester City and Liverpool themselves in the league, Nottingham Forest, we know that we can't take our eye off those games. They're very difficult games in their own right, and we'll have to focus on each and every step before we get to the final.
Sven Botman was substituted in the second half against Arsenal. Is he okay, and is he available for this weekend?
I don't think he'll be available for this weekend. So he's taken a knock, as you say, to his knee. It's the opposite knee to the ACL injury. I don't believe it's a serious injury, but it'll be enough to keep him out, as I say, for the Birmingham game, and then we'll assess him during the week next week before we lead into our next league game.
Is this a good opportunity to make a few changes? You don't have necessarily a lot of options in some areas, but there are a few players who will be desperate to play this weekend who perhaps haven't had a game for a while.
Yeah, I think we'll have to, as you say. I think mentally, physically, it'd be a difficult ask for the same players to go again and give the same energy that they did to the game on Wednesday. So yes, we don't have, as I said many times, we don't have a huge squad in terms of depth, especially with a couple of injuries that we've picked up, with Sven missing and Joe Linton out. But we'll try and pick a team that we think is strong enough to win. We'll give opportunities to other players, but they need to take their opportunity, because with the strength that we have in terms of fighting for our starting 11, any chance that anyone gets, they have to take.
And into the final of one domestic cup competition, how important is the other? How important is the FA Cup to you and your season?
It's a very important competition. We enjoyed the run we had last year until we met Manchester City. That was obviously a difficult tie for us, but we did well in both competitions last year, cup competitions, and we want to try and go as far as we can in the FA Cup. But we do know this will be a really difficult game. I mean, you look at Birmingham's league form has been very, very strong. A long unbeaten run. I think they've only lost once at home. And that was to a Premier League team in the Carabao Cup. So, yeah, it's going to be a good test for us and a real test of our squad strength.
Finally, on Birmingham, can you take us back to 2014 when you took Bournemouth there and won by 8-0? What do you remember about that day and that huge victory that you had?
I think I remember, if I remember rightly, they had a man sent off early in the game, which made it very difficult for them. And it was one of those days where everything we hit seemed to go in. Of course, good memories from that. But I think every time you go to Birmingham, or every time I've gone to Birmingham, you realise the size of the club. It is a huge football club with a brilliant support base. So I think it's a really good ground to play, and I've always enjoyed the atmosphere there. We respect them, and Chris Davies has done a brilliant job going in there and building a team that looks like it's ready for promotion back into the Championship. And a great club.
Thank you. Nisha?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
I just wanted to ask how Callum Wilson has responded to being involved in the game midweek.
Yeah, he seems fine. I think Callum, very, very confident about his body at this moment in time. I think he's gone through several things slightly differently this time around in his recovery. He's done a lot of work. You know, he's trained very hard for this moment. He's got a lot of miles behind him, so he feels robust. He feels strong. I think in his eyes feels ready to start games and impact the team and play to his full potential. So fingers crossed his body responds in a positive way.
You've talked there about rotation for this game and needing to make some changes physically and mentally. We've talked a lot about Nick Pope and Martin Dubravka, and obviously Nick Pope's back from his injury. Is this potentially a good opportunity for him to get some minutes again?
Yeah, potentially. I don't necessarily want to tell everyone my team, but I think we will use the game to share some of the load. Some of the lads have played a lot of minutes, and I don't think you can always measure the mental fatigue. You can measure the physical fatigue, but the mental fatigue is just as important, especially for a lot of our players who've younger guys who have played in a lot of big games in a short period of time. But then the guys that come in need to see it as an opportunity and they need to grab it, and I'm sure that will be the intention of everybody within the squad.
We talked a lot about the emotion last time surrounding making the final of the League Cup. Thomas Frank said he gives his players 24 hours to kind of enjoy a good victory. Do you do something similar for your team so that, you know, they can enjoy it, but then switch off, be focused for the next challenge?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say I have a hard and fast rule for it. I think I like to live in the emotion slightly, so whether that's positive or negative, I'm talking about my own personal response. If it's a negative emotion, then I look to try and learn from it and try and see all the lessons that is trying to teach me, and then from the positive, try and cut through that really, and again, try and analyse it from a football perspective rather than just the emotion, because sometimes the emotion can be misleading behind actually how you've behaved. Sorry, not how you behaved, how you performed. So it's trying to cut through the emotion and actually see the reality. And sometimes it's not as bad as you think negatively, and it's not as good as you think positively. So I just try to stick to the football, really. And
just finally, have you allowed yourself that moment to kind of visualise potentially lifting that trophy?
No, I've not really thought too deeply on it. I think I've very quickly realised after the game on Wednesday that the size of our task for Saturday, because it's more of a mental challenge, I think, to recover the players, to refocus our energy, and to see the game like we need to see it. We need to see this as a really big challenge, and we need to rise to it, because if we don't, this could be a really difficult FA Cup game for us. So I can't live there too long in terms of going somewhere else. It's very much now about back to work very, very quickly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nisha. Simon.
Morning, Eddie. We speak often about that phrase, after the Lord Mayor's show, and I often wonder if that's a bit overstated, but if there was ever going to be a danger of that, after the huge high of the other night, is that a danger this weekend? Yeah,
absolutely it is. However you describe it, after the Lord Mayor's show is one that's used a lot, and I get it. And that's sort of one of the dangers for this weekend for us. But I back our players' professionalism, I back our players' ability. And I have to say, we've been involved in so many big games now that the highs are high, of course it is, after Wednesday. We can't pretend that doesn't exist, but I think hopefully the players have become more used to then returning to work and then going, right now, how do we win the next game? And then that's where we have to live. We have to be the type of team that can adjust its sights very quickly and be very proud of our levels of performance and our levels of motivation to go and win the next game.
Birmingham, obviously a League One team, but they're the leaders of League One, and obviously you mentioned that unbeaten record. They've been unbeaten for a very long time. How much more dangerous does that make them? Because they're almost a team that at their level has forgotten how to lose.
Yeah, I've been there myself. And yeah, it makes them a very dangerous team, because as you say, they've got that rhythm and momentum of winning and winning consistently, and it doesn't. The level doesn't come into play. This will be a team that's very well coached by Chris. I mean, I think he's got them playing a really high level of football, very expansive, very good with the ball, tactically quite interesting, a very aggressive, high pressing team. So that they're playing like a top level team. So I think that adds to the challenge for us. We can't underestimate them in any way. We can't underestimate the challenge that we face, and we need to rise to it. And that's the big thing, I think, the response of our players.
We all know cup shocks can happen. you look at the talent, your players should beat their players. So how do you make sure that you're not the victim of a cup shot?
You summed it up quite nicely there. I think it's down to attitude. I think it's down to our mental response. If we are our aggressive selves like we were on Wednesday, if we know the importance of every duel, then hopefully our ability will show.
Thanks, Simon. Go to Gary and then Lee.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
You spoke about Nick Pope there, obviously with what happened 2 years ago at Wembley. He must be chomping at the bit, isn't he, to get back in and, you know, avoid missing out again.
Yeah, I think Nick has shown from his training mentality, his training performances have been very strong since he's come back from injury. I think you can see he's highly motivated. He wants to make up for lost time. Losing him through injury was a big blow, and big blow for him. So I think he'll see any opportunity as a chance to remind everybody, not that we need reminding, but the outside world reminded of just how good a goalkeeper he is. He's got outstanding qualities, and we back him 100%.
And just on Callum as well, obviously everybody knows what a threat he is in front of goal. It's been obviously a tough season for him, but it's a funny old game in football, and he has a chance now, potentially, you know, with a Wembley final on. He's got that thing to write himself a sort of fairy tale ending to what's been a nightmare campaign.
Yeah, I think Callum always had that in the back of his mind. I think with every disappointment that he's faced this season, and he's had a couple of really dark moments where things have gone against him, and he's then had to re-enter a period of rehab, and that can sometimes be a real challenge mentally because you've been there so many times and you've got to go again. But I think he's always had a positive outlook. He's always had something on the horizon that he can target, and I think in part us still being involved in the latter stages of the Carabao Cup was one of the targets for him. Of course, doing well in the league, and you know he is such a positive person that he's seeing these games on the horizon and using that as a motivational tool in his recovery. So I know he's done that, and I know he's used it. And I just hope there's a positive outcome for him personally, that he's back on the pitch and scoring goals.
And just finally from me, I don't know if you are superstitious or not. I think Newcastle, the fans have got the same end at Wembley. I just wondered, is there anything you'll be doing different this time? Change of hotel, anything at all that you'll be changing? Or haven't you even thought about it yet?
I think we will be doing things slightly differently, but not so much towards a superstition viewpoint. I think I've said before, I was more superstitious as a player. I think as a manager that you sort of, I tend to look at things slightly differently now. Fate will take its course, but as long as I prepare the team as well as I can, I'm quite content with not thinking it's because I've walked away to the car or anything like that's going to have an impact on the game. So I've become a lot more free in myself. Other people will have various things they do, and I've got no issue with that. But for me personally, I've just got to try and get the players in the best condition and then leave fate to do its work.
Thanks, Gary. Lee?
Eddie, how important is it that, you know, the magic the other night of that game and the atmosphere and everything that went with it, how important is it you try and bottle as much of that up and use it for the rest of the season now?
Yeah, bottling it up. If you could do that for me, it'd be great. Because we'd love a sprinkle of that in every game. I think it's very difficult to do it, but certainly some of the images, some of the passages of play, depending on what theme of the game we're looking at, we'll certainly use again. There was so much good to take from the game in terms of our attitude and how we've made good things happen off the back of a lot of hard work. So we'll definitely use that. We'll definitely try to relate back to the game again. But I think you've got to understand the psychology of that game compared to, say, the game we're going into is totally different. But there's always an angle that you can help the players with. There's always an angle that we need to look at this game, and see it in isolation and try and find a psychological edge that can help us.
And the club signed a couple of young players over the window. Is the club now looking to sort of make stars rather than bring superstars in as it has in the past?
Yeah, I think making stars is something that the club will do and has had a vision of doing ever since I arrived. I know there was a big push to sign some really talented younger players at the academy, and the guys in the other building can really help develop and flourish and then nurture into the first team. That's always been part of the plan. I think with PSR now that is probably more weighted to that direction as well, because if you can bring one or two gems through, it can have a massive difference and help to everything that we're trying to achieve here. But I still think there's room for signing established players. I think there has to be for where we are and the size of club that we are. So a mixture of both, really. Just
finally, are you going to be tapping into John Ruddy's Birmingham knowledge ahead of this game?
John Ruddy's got knowledge of most clubs. He's had a long and illustrious career, and he's played for some great teams. So we'll be speaking to him about lots of different things. But John has been brilliant, I have to say, behind the scenes. I can't praise people like John. You know, he's come into the football club. He's fully embraced everything that we've asked him to do. He's here at youth games. He's really invested in trying to help people. Every player, I'm sure he's touched in some way, used his experience. So John's been a vital part of what we've done this year.
Thanks, Lee. We'll go to Aaron, Dominic and then Charlie.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
Plenty of debate, obviously, about the stadium recently, stay or go, but the nights like Wednesday and that atmosphere, serve up as a big reminder of how good the club have got it at the minute.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, I'm sure for a lot of people watching that game, not connected with Newcastle, you can see, wow, what an atmosphere, what an environment to play in. I'm sure there'd be a lot of people looking at that and thinking, how can we create that atmosphere at our stadium? So we're very lucky to have the facilities that we have, the supporters that we have. But of course, there's other challenges and other things that we now need to look at as a football club and try to improve various things, as we've said before, about the importance of our income. So it's a real delicately poised decision that, and of course I'm not making the decision, which is quite a relief really for me. I can blame it on someone else. But I think it just goes to showcase what a special place St James's Park is.
And you must be so happy that a player like Kieran Trippier can come in, essentially from the cold the other night and drop a pretty much faultless performance as well.
Yeah, I think Kieran showcased all his skills in that game. I think his experience was vital. It's a real calming influence on the team, but also a big voice in the team. And I think the leadership skills that he possesses are so rare to find these days, because it's that type of leadership, the old school leadership, where you're talking and communicating with everybody and thinking about the whole team rather than just yourself, is almost a bit of a dying art now. But Kieran has that, and he has the big game experience in abundance. So I think he used all his skills to help us, and I thought he gave a great performance individually as well.
Dominic?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
Other night, Emil Kraft came on for Sven Botman, his first time back on the pitch since October. I guess there's all the talk about Callum Wilson's return from injury being important, but after losing Lloyd Kelly, now Sven for a game, how important is Emil Kraft being back available, and is he ready to start games?
Yeah, I think Crafty, when he got injured, which was a real blow for us, I think his scheduled return date was, I think, something along the lines of 10 to 12 weeks. I think he ended up coming back sort of 7 to 8. And again, a testament to his professionalism, his character. He was determined to make himself available. We wanted to protect him because we didn't want him to come back too early. Wanted to make sure his injury had totally healed. So we've given him a little bit more time. But he's been excellent behind the scenes. He's just a real good character to have in the squad, a really consistent guy. He's always there and dependable and ready if you need him, and he came on the other night and I thought he was really, really good in a pressurised situation. So yeah, I'd say he's looked really good physically. I mean, the type of injury that he had meant that he could continue running really for the majority of the time that he was out, so fitness-wise he's absolutely fine.
He's one of several players out of contract at the end of the season. Is there any update on that situation?
I believe talks are still ongoing. He's certainly someone we want to keep.
And spoke about this heading into the last round against Bromley, but no VAR. After the opening minutes against Arsenal the other night, Alexander Isak scoring, that raw emotion was there, possibly dampened it when Jacob Murphy scored. Do you welcome that sort of change this weekend and almost a throwback to a simpler time?
Yeah, I think it always depends on the game and the incident and the outcomes. But I'm still quite happy when there's no VAR. I don't want those comments to come back to haunt me. But I enjoy when there's no flag and there's a goal. Obviously, if it's for us, knowing that the goal's there and there's going to be no pullback. Yeah, obviously that moment you talk about, full of emotion, the whole stadium, and of course, it was not given, but I've always said, and I can't contradict myself, the factual decisions, so the offsides I can live with. It's offside, it's offside. There's nothing you can do about it. You could then got to return, and I thought the lads did really well to mentally deal with that and then go back into the game and score pretty soon afterwards. It's the other decisions that I sometimes have an issue with.
Okay, we'll go to Charlie, Craig, and then Martin. Charlie?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
We're obviously aware how much silverware would mean to supporters, but speaking to you personally, and Jason and your coaching staff, how much would it mean to you to be the ones who finally get Newcastle over the line?
Of course, yeah, it's what we're here for. I said when I arrived, that was the aim. That was, of course, the immediate aim was to stay in the league and to propel the club away from the relegation zone, solidify our position in the Premier League. But the ultimate long-term aim was to win a trophy, and that's never changed. It's always been in our thoughts every season before every cup competition that we enter. We want to do the competition justice. We want to take it seriously in the early rounds, and that sometimes those rounds are very difficult to navigate. And this game that we have at the weekend will follow in that bracket, really, a really tough game for us. We're going to have to do everything we can to get through to the next round, stay in the competition, and as many competitions as we can be in, obviously the higher chance of us winning that trophy.
And just on transfers, Eddie, I don't want to bore you with a PSR question. It's almost felt a little bit unfair to see you speak to the media every week and discuss PSR. Can we expect to see Paul or Darren anytime soon speak to the media?
Yes, you can.
Nice one, thank you.